It's another day of angry protests and tension in Douala in Cameroon. The country had awaited the results of the presidential election that took place 2 weeks ago with bated breath. But when the results announced an 8th mandate for President Paul Biya, the city, like many others, erupted into protests.
Tensions are rising once again in Central Africa. And this time, the world is watching. The nation of Cameroon, home to over 30 million people, is standing at the edge of a political storm that may define its future. The re-election of President Paul Biya at 93 years old has set off protests, petitions, and outrage both inside and outside the country. What's happening in Cameroon is not just another political story. It's a mirror reflecting Africa's deeper struggle. A struggle between the old and the new, between the rulers who refuse to leave and the youth who demand a voice. From the bustling streets of Douala to the diplomatic offices of Abuja, people are speaking out. One of those voices is Timi Frank, a Nigerian diplomat and activist who has taken a bold step, petitioning the United Nations to investigate alleged election fraud and the killing of peaceful protesters in Cameroon. His message is clear. Africa can no longer remain silent when democracy is being strangled.
Military have joined the protest in Cameroon. Take a look at what is happening right now.
According to Cameroon's Constitutional Council, President Paul Biya has once again been declared the winner of the country's presidential election with 53.7% of the vote, defeating opposition leader Issa Kiroma Bakari, who reportedly secured 35.2%. But few were surprised. For many, this was not a victory of democracy. It was a confirmation of power that has been carefully maintained for more than 4 decades. Biya has ruled Cameroon since 1982, marking 43 years in power, longer than most Cameroonians have been alive. With a median age of just 19, the majority of the country's population has never known another leader. As the results were announced, tension quickly turned to chaos. In Douala, Garoua, and Yaoundé, protesters flooded the streets, waving flags and chanting for change. But their cries were met with tear gas and bullets. Shops shut down, armored vehicles rolled through the streets, and the air filled with fear. The people's demand was simple. They wanted the truth from the ballot box. But instead of answers, they got silence from their government. From Nigeria, diplomat Timi Frank broke that silence with fiery words that echoed across the continent. He called Biya's re-election an insult to democracy and a disgrace to Africa's conscience. In his statement, he accused the government of orchestrating what he called a daylight robbery of the people's will. According to Timi Frank, what happened in Cameroon was not just manipulation. It was a mockery of democracy. He said innocent Cameroonians are being killed by their own security forces simply for demanding that their votes count. His outrage didn't stop there. Frank took the bold step of filing a petition to the United Nations, urging them to investigate both the alleged electoral fraud and the killings of protesters. He also called on the International Criminal Court, ICC, to open a case against those responsible, warning that the African Union's silence in the face of such injustice is a betrayal of its founding principles. He went further to say, by refusing to act, the AU is encouraging tyranny. This silence is what fuels coups and instability across Africa. When people are denied peaceful change, they turn to desperation. Frank's words strike a painful truth, one that many African countries have lived through. From Mali to Burkina Faso, Niger to Guinea, a pattern is emerging. Elections manipulated, opposition silenced, and people losing faith in democracy. In Douala, reports say at least 4 protesters have been killed and dozens arrested. Security forces used both tear gas and live ammunition to disperse crowds. In Yaoundé, armored vehicles patrolled intersections as citizens stayed indoors, afraid to speak. The fear was real, the silence louder than the gunfire. Meanwhile, President Paul Biya remained unseen. No speech, no public appearance, only a written statement congratulating himself on his victory. It was a strange image, a silent leader presiding over a noisy crisis. Opposition candidate Issa Kiroma Bakari, however, claims victory. According to independent observers, Kiroma, once a member of Biya's government, was leading in early tallies before the results were announced. His sudden drop in votes raised suspicion across the country. Reports even claim that armed forces surrounded his residence as tension grew, though those details remain unverified. This crisis in Cameroon reflects a much larger African problem, the grip of aging rulers over a youthful continent. The average age of African leaders remains over 60, while the average citizen is under 20. Many of these leaders came to power during the Cold War, yet they now govern a generation living in the digital era.
As you can see, military over there in Cameroon, we are seeing hailing the protesters. In fact, they joined them in protesting right now. This is what is happening in Cameroon. The same thing that almost happened in Madagascar a few days ago.
As one Cameroonian activist told reporters, "We are a young nation trapped in an old system." Timi Frank's petition wasn't just about Cameroon. It was a cry for the entire continent, a demand for accountability, transparency, and renewal. He urged world powers like the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations to impose targeted sanctions on Biya and his inner circle, travel bans, asset freezes, and suspension of military assistance. He declared, "The world must show that those who steal elections and spill blood will face consequences. Anything less will only embolden other dictators." The African Union, which was expected to lead in defending democratic values, has remained largely silent. Critics say this silence is not neutrality, it's complicity. Timi Frank's warning is clear. When peaceful change is blocked, violent change becomes inevitable. This is a lesson written across Africa's modern history, from Sudan to Gabon, from Guinea to Niger. When governments ignore the people's voices, frustration turns into rebellion. Rebellion invites repression, and repression leads to instability. Cameroon, already battling Boko Haram insurgents in the north and Anglophone separatists in the west, cannot afford more chaos. Yet the government's response, silencing dissent rather than addressing it, risks pushing the country into deeper turmoil. The instability in Cameroon could easily spill into its neighbors, Nigeria, Chad, and the Central African Republic, creating another wave of regional insecurity. In Africa, when one nation trembles, the shockwaves never stop at the border. For 43 years, Paul Biya has been the face of Cameroon. To his supporters, he is the man who brought stability. To his critics, he is a symbol of stagnation. They argue that peace built on fear and manipulation is not peace, it's paralysis. Even some of Biya's former allies now admit the cracks are widening. Issa Kiroma Bakari, once Biya's own minister and spokesperson, has now turned into his strongest challenger. His message resonates with the youth. The people have spoken, but their voices have been stolen. Across Cameroon, the younger generation is restless. They are connected, informed, and no longer afraid to speak. As one young protester said, "We respect our elders, but we want our future back." That statement captures the soul of this struggle. Africa's youth are not rebelling against age. They are rebelling against stagnation. The Cameroonian crisis is not an isolated story. It is a lesson for the continent. It shows that elections without credibility can destroy nations from within. It reveals how power, when concentrated in one man's hands for too long, corrodes both the government and the hope of the people. And yet, even amid this darkness, there is light, the light of African voices rising. People like Timi Frank, movements of young activists, journalists, and citizens who still believe in a better tomorrow. In his final statement, Timi Frank warned, "If the world fails to act decisively, it will send a message to all African dictators that they can steal elections and shed blood without consequence. The time to act is now." His words carry a deeper truth. Democracy is not just about voting, it's about protecting the will of the people after the vote is cast. As this crisis unfolds, one old African proverb rings louder than ever. The tree that refuses to bend will eventually break. Power, like a tree, must sometimes bend to the wind of the people's will. When it refuses, it risks falling altogether. Cameroon stands today at a crossroads. The continent watches, the world listens. This is no longer just about one election. It's about the soul of African democracy and the courage of citizens who still dare to dream. At Voice of Africa, we remain committed to telling these stories, stories that reveal truth, reflect courage, and amplify the voices that power tries to silence. Because, as another African proverb reminds us, when truth rises, falsehood runs away. Thank you for watching Voice of Africa. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our updates on stories shaping Africa's future.